Hello everyone. Welcome to another talk here on conversations, and conversations. This is about knowing each other to help each other, one of us to, grow in life, grow in our life and growing strong. Today we have in conversation with us Cathy Perez, who is a health coach, helping women create a healthy relationship with anxiety and stress. Hello, Cathy. Thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure. I'm so glad that you asked, and I appreciate the time. And thank you for all you're doing for your community. I mean, that's sensational. You already are so busy with what you do on a daily basis, but this is extra, and I can't tell you how much it's really, just really appreciated.
I'm so grateful for the opportunity as well, because we all need to grow and we all need to support each other, wherever we can. This is our contribution to our lives together. It is a collective on planet Earth. That's how I feel.
I love it. Absolutely. Yeah, I just love it. And who doesn't like to talk about themselves, right?
Yeah. So what made you decide to take up a profession, like being a health coach, talking about anxiety and stress? You support women with anxiety. Does it not affect you? Does it get overwhelming? Tell us a little about yourself.
Wonderful question. So thank you. So funny enough, I am my own, say, client. And so I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder in 2001. And like I say in my little group, in my little welcome video, I didn't tell anyone. And I come from a culture where, you don't really talk about mental health. It's all about being very strong and just moving forward no matter what. In other words, ignoring your feelings, right? Ignoring your emotions, not giving into weakness, or what we perceived, right, as weakness. And so I, for 2 years, didn't tell anyone what was going on. So I sought out therapy. And let me backtrack really quick that I probably dealt with anxiety pretty much all my life. Right. I had my first, what I know now was probably an anxiety episode back when I was in junior high. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't pinpoint it, but I know now what it was. And so long story short, I sought out therapy, and I encourage anyone, when you don't have the answers yourself or you're afraid to ask, go seek out therapy, counseling, because that's what saved me those first 2.5 years. So I went to therapy, or attended therapy for like 2 years. And then I thought, okay, I got this going on, I'm cool. And, a lot of things, life happens. Eventually I did tell my family. So they, I could tell that they were still not sure how to approach me about talking about it. And that's okay. I never felt like, in any way, shape, or form that at first I was ashamed, but then I just realized, hey, this is just what happens, right? And so they, they let it be. And then in 2012, when I thought that I had, seemingly did everything I could, because in actuality, in 2010, my anxiety started to creep up, right? So what I was using prior wasn't seemingly working anymore. And so I sought out a help of a naturopathic doctor in 2010 for anxiety and stress. And that was wonderful. And then, unfortunately, or at least, in my head, unfortunately, in 2012, when I hadn't had episodes, so to speak, for many years, in 2012, I had a doozy. I had an anxiety episode that literally I was laid down on the floor, right? I mean, in the fetal position, and it was horrible. And I told myself out loud, but just in a way that it's almost like it was coming from another voice. And I told myself, I will do everything I can not to let this happen again. And so from that time on, I did everything I could to change my lifestyle, right? And so fast forward in 2016, I was having more health challenges beyond just anxiety in itself. But I sought out, finally, after all these years, a coach. And so I had my first fitness coach. And through their brilliance, through their mentorship, it was like life-changing. And so I finally was able to borrow their faith and their belief in me and say, you know what, I have something to offer women who are also going through anxiety and stress, because I worked through so many years, literally 20 plus years, of figuring out a path, a way, and a successful route to having that healthy relationship with anxiety. And I still deal with it. I mean, I went live last month, seemingly almost having another panic attack, but I was able to use my own tools to talk myself down and say, wait a minute, I'm okay. And so through the mentorship of my coach, through my own lifelong journey and passion for health and fitness and wellness, I finally decided to become a health coach. And it was a process, but I'm so happy I did it. And so, like I said, I am my own niche, meaning I still deal with it, and I'm not afraid to admit that. And in fact, I think it makes me even more, likable, because I'm only a few steps ahead of my clients. So I know exactly what they're feeling when they're feeling it, and I know what to tell them and how to help them so that they can move through it.
Yeah, experiences make all the differences, because when you have gone through something, it's been a journey, and you exactly know what triggers, and you can believe the other person, what they are saying, because at times one gets caught up in the, in the situation where one may feel that I'm being judged. But here, like it is, what it is like. So the question of, feeling at least one point, it can be taken off the list, that one is being judged with a coach or a mentor. This is something which is very, very important. At least for me, at times, you are put on spot and you feel that, oh, well, maybe that person must be thinking about you. So yes, it makes a lot of difference. Thank you for sharing that. And do you feel that there are some specific patterns or certain issues that create stress and anxiety in women, especially in this side of the world?
That's an interesting question. And I would probably say, no one wants to generalize, right? Especially about mental health and so forth. But there is definitely a pattern when it comes to people like me who deal with higher levels of anxiety, and especially women. We already, as women, right, we experience so much disproportionate responsibilities for families, for, we are seen as, well, I mean, it's just true, the disparities between males and females is there, right? We're not going to deny that. So already you have that anxiety built up internally. This is where males are, this is where females are, right? And even though we're starting to try to equalize, there's still that inherent, the women take care of this, this, and this. Those roles, even though we're doing our best to make it more equal, those roles still are very much family-oriented, caregivers. They're all thrown on the woman stuff. And so inherently, by our own biology, we are caretakers, we are nurturers. And so it's interesting that our own ability to nurture is what actually gives us more anxiety, because we're so giving, we're so willing to fill other people's cups that we forget to fill our own. So the definitely the cycle I see most is that women are expected to give so much of themselves, and yet they're not expected to ask for anything back. We don't know as women how to ask for help. And when we do, we're seen as weak, and we're seen as being troublemakers. So the pattern is simply, I don't ask for help, even though I know I want it and need it, simply because I don't want the repercussions of what people are going to say. And because society is so hard on women, that's where this just, like, I want to say mountain of stress happens, and it just builds up and it builds up. So the pattern is simply society puts these roles onto us, and we're expected to fulfill them without complaining, or what we perceive as complaining, when really it's just us asking, wait, I need help now. And so I see it so much. And, last year was just a horrible example of it, on such a big scale. I think the percentage of women that left the workforce alone was like over 60% or something. It might be between 30 and 60%. And a lot of them aren't likely to return. Not to say they don't or will not, but that's just, it's a crazy statistic to know that simply because of patriarchal thoughts that we're given more anxiety rather. So that's the way I kind of see it. So the pattern is such, we are not allowed to ask for help. And when we do, we're seen as being basically troublemakers.
Yeah, there's kind of, they assume different roles at different times, keep making adjustments. And generally they are taken for granted. I'm again generalizing it. It's not good,
Mhm.
but things are changing definitely. But yes, during the past year, we have seen a lot of episodes of many things. Even I work with a nonprofit, and we have seen a rise in domestic violence too, because women are taken for granted that no matter what, you got to do it, and
Absolutely.
that she alone needs to deal with it. So yes, and how do you interpret, emotions of the groups you support, like what the emotions that are happening? Like, I know that you have some Facebook groups as well, you have your own clientele groups as well. So what are your observations? Like, there are different people, different emotions, and uh, pain is, we cannot segregate one pain from, because the intensity for each one is the same, it's high. One can compare from outside, but for the person self, it is going to be high, and that's why a person is looking for help. So how do you interpret emotions, and how do you deal with them for people?
That's a wonderful question. And I love how you emphasize emotions because, again, people will be quick to say, oh, anxiety is an emotion. No, really, it is.
Mm-mm.
Anxiety, and I always want to preface this because it's so important. There's shame involved. So you ask, what are the prevalent emotions? It's shame and it's fear, right? So shame is a huge one, fear, and then guilt. I would say probably more guilt than anything, but shame is in there, right? I consider shame and guilt different.
Yeah.
And so, what's interesting is that people don't recognize that emotions are emotions. That's what makes us human. In particular, anxiety. Anxiety is a subcomponent of fear, right? It's part of our fight or flight system. But because we are taught as a society to not fear and to show bravery at all costs, we're seen as weak when we have anxiety. And so people then feel guilty. Why do I feel this way? I shouldn't feel this way. That starts the cycle of this thought process that our brains, and this probably about open loops. It's a very big mental, term. Basically, what all that is that you have a thought and it just keeps going through your head, through your head. Well, your brain picks up on that and will then start repeating it on its own without us even knowing it. So without us even thinking about it, subconsciously, now we think that anxiety only deals with shame and guilt. And so we got to be fearful of it. So what I do on a daily basis with my clients, with my group members, is tell them repeatedly, there's nothing to be ashamed about with anxiety. If you're dealing with anxiety and you're the type of person that actually requires like medication, don't shame yourself on that. Your chemistry is a little, different. And so you get to work with it. At some point, maybe you'll be able to wean yourself off, but that's not the point. The point is you get to be okay with what anxiety is because it's not going to go away. It is part of our human experience and it keeps us alive. And so when people start realizing that anxiety is not a weakness, right? None of our emotions are about being weak. They're simply about how we react to the world around us. And so when we're able to better understand those feelings and let them ebb and flow as they should, you're going to walk a lot easier with anxiety, but definitely guilt, shame, and fear in the wrong sense, right? Not because your life is in danger, but simply just fear of what others think about you. That definitely causes most of the anxiety that I've seen.
So have you noticed that people who have anxiety, they are more prone to get into, I want to frame my words very carefully, maybe using of, some medications and other substances. How do you help them to check that?
So in the way of, and let me just confirm that I understood, like when I have clients or even people who, are just in a group who inform me that they are using medication, like how do I work with them? Is that?
Yes, kind of how do you help them, like because somebody who is leaning, who is almost, maybe I will just say that they're really addicted to some form of prescriptions,
Okay.
Substances, or anything, can be any particular behavior. They need to do something to check their anxiety and they feel, and yet it is not really checking it. It's just, trying to numb them.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And thank you for clarifying. So I myself, when I was first diagnosed, and I'll use myself as an example. When I was first diagnosed with anxiety disorder, my primary care physician, before she referred me out to a therapist, did prescribe me the very lowest dosage of whatever medication it was, right? And I remember my own self. I remember looking at this little pill and telling myself, why do I need to take this? So I asked myself. And so I did take it once, simply because I was told that this will help me relax. And I'm like, okay, I'm not afraid of this pill, but what is it about me, why I want or should take this pill? And so that's when my thought process was like, wait a minute, if my brain is causing the problem in the first place, my brain should be able to fix itself. And so I approach anyone who's, and again, I have many friends, even family members, right, who are dealing with anxiety or some type of depression. So they're using, medication. What I would say to that, oh my gosh, I don't in any way, shape, or form want anyone not to take medication, because maybe they really seriously are depressed, or maybe seriously their anxiety is so bad that they can't function at all. So use the medication for what it's for, right? To help you calm down. But then what I try to do, and this is with clients as well as just people asking, is tell them, well, wait a minute. Yes, go ahead and use your medicine as prescribed, but let's see if Mother Nature can't also support you with your anxiety. Because again, anxiety is not going to go away. So your choice is, okay, either I learn to live harmoniously with anxiety, or I'm going to be on a lot of medication, depending on what your problem is, right? And this can be for any illness, not just anxiety. And so I take a very holistic approach to how I deal with my clients. And I'm like, you know what? Obviously, they thought this was necessary, so fine, go ahead, right? I'm not going to demonize Western medicine. What I am going to suggest and promote is, okay, you're going to use this, but let's see if you can't train your brain, which you can, to learn to understand your anxiety better, so that maybe you're not so reliant on the medication. And I find a lot of times people just really gravitate. There are a lot of, the women that I've talked to, they don't want to be on medication, and they would prefer a more holistic way to help the anxiety. And so I think it's just the knowledge gap, really, is that, okay, the Western medicine only uses this method, which is mostly prescription. Then you have holistic ways, right, of, all types of different modalities. Well, when you start to integrate and they actually learn that they can do that, that's when I think that's how I approach it. So again, I'm not going to demonize anything. What I am going to do is educate the women and say, look, these are your options. Now let's see if maybe you can't put them a little bit more, marry them together, right? I know plenty of people who would like to get off medicine, but right now it's not the best thing to do, until which time they have the tools and the experience to understand their anxiety better, so that at some point, yes, maybe they can decide to wean themselves off. And that's a personal choice as well, right?
Yeah. So is it, would you classify anxiety as a mood disorder or a personality disorder or borderline personality? Is it something like that, or is it different?
So, and again, because I don't have come from a psychology background, but anxiety disorder is the main category, but it is considered a mental disorder. And it has a lot of subcomponents. So you have social anxiety, you have separate. I mean, you have all types of anxieties, right? But ultimately, it would be considered, it's classified as a mental, right, disorder, for lack of a better term. But it's actually not part of like depression. Depression is its own, right? So someone could have anxiety, maybe not have depression. Someone could have depression and maybe, well, what in my learnings, what I've heard is that anxiety usually happens first, and then it trickles into depression. Not to say that there's anything less scary about anxiety, but again, anxiety, again, is part of our fight or flight system. So it's just the overuse of our anxiety. Whereas depression really is like, oh my goodness, right? Like that's like, we get depressed when we're sad, right? If something bad happens, but it should go away. Same with anxiety, but they are separate emotions. And so they're considered separate. I don't know if that answers your question well, but
yes, it does quite a bit. And we are not going into the technical or the scientific medical terminology, just on a broader understanding, you know, for us who are watching and who are listening to you. So do you think like how that anxiety is triggered off, you know, with culture, societal, religious norms, or maybe peer group, and even social media, as we mentioned, we were talking the other day, and you did bring this up. And, you know, has it got anything to do with it, or it's got to do with your own genetics, you know, genes or something like that?
And thank you for that, because you actually answered the question very well in the fact that it is both. It is genetic. And so, you know, and I think anyone would agree with that, because scientifically it has been proven. So depression, anxiety, again, it's all in our DNA, right? So those patterns are set in there. So my mom suffered from depression. And, you know, all they did for her was, or rather, you know, I'm not going to demonize my own mother, but she was not one to seek out more help, right? And so she was prescribed Prozac, she was prescribed other, you know, other similar pills. And so that was how she dealt with it, right? And so again, there's a perception behind any mental illness, right? It's interesting because if I had somehow some type of, you know, physical ailment, that's acceptable. Like that's seen as, oh, you're strong and look at you going through this. However, when you look at someone, you don't see their mental issues. And then you're like, well, what's wrong with you? Just because you don't look different doesn't mean that there's nothing going on, right? So there is definitely, again, that perception that mental illness is not a problem. Somehow that it can be swept under the rug or it's not a big issue. Well, I would definitely disagree with that, because when I was in my fetal position in my bedroom, crying and uncontrollably unconsolable, that was real fear. Like you know, people have died of stress, right? I mean, it is something to consider. So I don't think people, and I think that perception is finally changing, but now that we know more scientifically about how our brains work, I think finally, little by little, society is coming to the realization that, oh my goodness, mental illness is quite prevalent, but it's also very important. And I will give the example of all the Olympians, right? I mean, oh my goodness, like it would seemingly be that every Olympian was having, and rightly so, right? I'm not going to, you know, downplay that, but they finally came to light. Wait a minute. Yes, I'm super cool, but I'm also a human, and my mental state is not where it should be. So I think perception is slowly changing, but it's still that perception that mental illness means you're weak in some way. And I'm like, no. And again, it plays to the whole women especially, because we do seemingly suffer from it more. Well, rightly so, simply because of all the external societal responsibilities that come to us. So I think it's definitely, DNA produced, but you definitely have environmental factors, I think, that play even more, you know, into when someone is developing anxiety or even depression for that matter.
Yeah, so tell me, Cathy, like based on your personal experience ongoing research, with your experience again, what is your approach? What kind of therapies you may use? Do you use alternative healing techniques, food and nutrition? What exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a wonderful question. So yes. So what I like to say is that as a health coach, I am like a gap. I fill the gap, I bridge the gap between someone's medical team, right? They're medical professionals, and the outside world. That's, because you're only going to see, say, your therapist or your PCP or whomever it is that you're working with, maybe once a month, maybe 3 times, in a, or rather, whenever. I am that bridge to help someone move through society when they're not with their medical professionals. And so how I work with it is basically off of my own experience, right? But also I've spent literally 20 years of learning different modalities. And so I definitely take an integrative approach. Again, I'm not going to tell someone, oh, wait, you went to your therapist and they prescribed you medicine. You're not going to take that. No, I would never do that. No, please go to therapy. Please, if you need to take any type of medication, do it. What I'm here to do is to show you and to support you in different ways and tools and resources that can again, bridge that gap between what the medical professional is telling you and what society is then letting you, like participate in, meaning like you're not always going to be in the office with your psychologist, your counselor, right? You have to go into the real world after you've talked to them. And so integratively, I just show them holistic tools, and definitely that healthy habits definitely can help them and support them when they're dealing with any type of anxiety or stress. And to basically what happens is in my approach is I use different means to show them how their personal environment and even professional environment, but their actual physical environment can support them better so that they can transition more tranquilly throughout their life, and then create a lifestyle that is long-term benefiting their whole health, which then brings down your anxiety.
So in the process, would you be referring them to certain professionals if need be, like maybe for any kind of specific, maybe even a blood test, or maybe a physician if need be? Do you ever need to do that? I'm just curious about it.
Well, I am a certified health eating and weight loss coach. I am certified in as a yoga instructor. I'm the 159th worldwide certified Konmari organizing consultant. So I use all those different certifications and lessons that I've learned, and I put them into a system that will then lead someone through a better path, right? To learn how to have lifelong, success, so to speak, rather in their lifestyle, so that their anxiety comes down. But I am not authorized, I believe, to ever. What I can do is offer recommendations, but I'm not able to refer, so to speak, someone. Oh, I think you need to go to your PCP and get a blood test. Although, again, I can recommend that. And again, when people are any of my clients, they're actually already working with some type of medical team, and so again, they are utilizing me as another resource, so to speak.
To bridge the gap, as you mentioned.
Yeah. But would I definitely give someone the recommendation, hey, you know what, I think you really ought to think about counseling or seeing whatever it might be, because again, I know what that feels like. And so I know that it can help. And I'm not going to ever offer or suggest something that I've never tried. But I'm not afraid to let someone tell me, oh, I've tried this, this, and this, and then to offer them, okay, well, did it work for you? Like, in other words, talk them through it so that they feel more comfortable about their own decision.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this time where you are, do you think it is a personal victory for you? How do you feel about yourself, in a way?
That's a wonderful question. I don't know if I've ever heard it quite that way. That's great. I love it. That's and so thank you for that. You know what? I am definitely I always knew, I have had a passion for health and fitness since I can remember, but I gave into society and believed that I would not be able to make a living, or that if I went into an industry, i.e. health and fitness, that I would resent working in my passion, which is health and fitness, simply because I'd be getting a paycheck for something that I'm passionate about. My thought process was wrong. So looking back, I listened to society and it caused me anxiety. Had I listened to myself and trusted my intuition, I probably would have already been probably a psychologist or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, I am very proud of myself. In a very short time period, so I met my coach in 2016, and in a very short time, I went from not believing that I could ever be a leader for others to follow, and then all of a sudden deciding, you know what, I am worthy. I have something to offer women that I know can help them. And I absolutely want to help as many women as possible. And that means I get to reach into my own self and understand that I'm worthy, I'm loved, and gosh darn it, I am safe and I can help others. And so I'm very proud to say that, yes, I am a coach now, and I'm helping women understand that they have absolutely all the power to be their own health advocate and to live a much more tranquil and a very thriving life, for sure.
Yes, yes. So what specific steps, you may like to share if you want to, like especially who may be watching this conversation and are unsure where to begin and take the right steps, when they're in a similar position, something that is triggering their emotions, getting into anxiety. So what steps they may take at that time or following that?
Sure. And feel free to interrupt me, but, I would say, don't ever be afraid to ask, for sure, your medical team, whoever they are right now, like, okay, I'm having these feelings. In other words, please always ask for help. And one way you could do that is if you're a female watching this, right, feel free to look up my Facebook group. It's free. It's a support group. It's Empowering Women Healthy Habits for Less Anxiety. And I mean, again, it's just about sharing resources, being willing to be vulnerable, right? So that you can ask questions and see who else can support you. But it's all about, in my head, just offering support and being that I guess you could say that, what do they call it? Like the shoulder to listen, right? That's my biggest, I guess gift to the world is I listen very well.
Yeah.
And then I can hopefully offer some type of resource, whether that's me or some other resource, to someone who's reaching out.
Yeah. So where does one should connect with you through the group, or is there any other page or a website where one can, of course, when I post this, then I will have some written material also with it. I will share on that as well.
Sure, that's where I'm most active, is in the Facebook group, and then anyone could easily send me a private message in Facebook Messenger. Those are the easiest ways to get a hold of me, simply because that's where I spend most of my time.
I know you're very prompt, very, very prompt. Thank you for being there. And yes, thank you for sharing your thoughts, Cathy. Hope to chat with you and discuss more with you sometimes again, a little more detail maybe on a particular aspect, will be good to hear from you. But yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm just really appreciative that what you're doing for the women in the world. I'm sure this is getting out to a lot of different people.
Yeah, yes, I hope many women, many youth are able to watch. I'm very, very passionate about, youth and women. So that